I got the time right here. I got the time right now.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Don Strong. I'm here in Minneapolis, Minnesota, with the man of the hour. We're going to have a short time with our commentator, Mr. David D. Strong, educator, aviator, creator, and man about town who has a lot to say. We like to say he's got the 411 that they will never teach you in school. And that's the truth. We are planning to kind of create a program where people want to follow uh, Brother David's advice to educate themselves on their own. And we're going to have that available in the near future. But for our episode today, we're going to be talking about two topics that are near and dear to all of us. One has to do with work and survival, something everybody has to deal with. So, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome our commentator and star, Brother David from Brooklyn. Good evening, sir.
Good evening. Good to see you today. Uh, I'd like to talk about what happened when the British Crown established the so-called 13 colonies back then in the 1600s. Uh, I don't think they had any invitation from the indigenous people to come over and establish some colonies. They just came over here as really uninvited guests. And that was very dangerous because the indigenous people here didn't understand what these people were about. And to their own detriment, it was very costly to them. It led to the ethnic cleansing and genocide of millions of people. Now, when the British people came over, the British Crown set up these colonies. They had to have workers to extract the wealth of the workers by doing the work and extract the wealth from the land that they moved into. So since the beginning, when they started to bring people from various European countries, people from the various parts of the British Isles and like Scotland and Ireland and Wales and so forth to the country. And when they got into the business of kidnapping African people and bringing them out over here, they essentially set up a system of total exploitation of workers. And that's what's been going on from the 1600s or before, when the British came over, until now, today. So what I'd like to talk about right now, I can't talk about all the hundreds of years of exploitation of workers, because that's the name of the game of capitalism. Exploit the workers and make profit for the capitalists. Let's move up to a point where we get to the United States during the Harry S. Truman era. And that's moving past the Great Depression and the things that happened under the Roosevelt administration, where certain bones were given out to people, such as Social Security and all the things that went along with it. Even though there were exceptions, African people were essentially left out of Social Security system because it did not include farm laborers and it did not include domestic workers. So it was a long time before that was changed. Well, in approximately 1947 and 1948, that takes us to the point where those social benefits that were established during the time of Roosevelt, and with the help of the socialists, the unions, the communists, and all those people that fought for the possible improvement in the social and economic benefit of the people, uh, the ruling class, that is the rich and powerful people that run their corporations, decided that they need to take some of these things back. And what they did in the Truman administration was they got a law passed called the Taft-Hartley Law. Now, I've talked to a lot of people, and they don't know anything about it. But the Taft-Hartley Law was a very dangerous, destructive law because they had a part of it that some people call today the right to work law, a right to work, which is nonsense. What it did was allow states to pass a law to disable unions. And that's what they did. In other words, if a union wanted to start up in certain states, and let's say they by chance got a contract with the employer, what this law did was say that those people who were not part of the union had to get the same benefits as someone who was in the union. So we have that going in effect today. That's in effect in approximately 27 states. And all those states where they have that type of law, right to work law, the workers get less, and that is an impediment to union membership. And so what has happened since the end of the Second World War and the Truman administration, membership in unions has gone way down. It's in single digits. Maybe 6 or 7% of the workers are in unions. So when you're in a union, you should have an organization that is fighting for the benefit of workers. But you know, the ruling class, people need to understand the ruling class, the people that run the corporation, the richest people, the 1%, the 110%, don't give a damn about the workers. They care about one thing only, and that's profit for themselves. So workers need to get it together and understand the system that they live in. And they understand, if they understand that, they'll be much better off. And those people in those 27 states that have this right to work law, they're at a disadvantage. Certain states don't have this, like New York. They don't have a right to work law. So what happens is, if you don't want to join a union, you don't have to join it, but you have to pay an agency fee for the work that the union does to protect your rights. So this is a very important thing, and I'm bringing this up because I met so many people, people that are much younger, people who graduated from college. They know nothing about these things. So you got to educate yourself. You got to look these things up. You got to do your own study. If you don't study on your own, they were very happy because you can be an ignoramus, because you're not going to learn about the things you need to know by just going to any school or college. You got to do your own self-study. So that's an important thing about right to work laws. And the ruling class has a way of naming things that are the opposite of what they're about. So if you live in Mississippi or Florida or Tennessee or places like that, and where they have right to work laws, you're going to be a disadvantage. And that is why in this country, we have a system of welfare for the rich and poverty for the masses. And as a result of that, right to now, today, in 2020, you have more than half the population poor or near poor, and the rich and powerful and ruling class is getting richer and richer. So People who talk about liberty and justice for all, forget about it. That's rhetoric. That has nothing to do with the reality of living in the United States, because the rich rule rather, and we need to know that. We don't have any, the people have no political party. There's no political party that represents the interests of the masses of people. There's one political party, the Uniparty, with two divisions, Republican and Democrat, and they don't represent the interests of the masses of people who work. They
Now,
represent
wait a
they
second.
represent the rulers.
Let me interject, Brother David. So you're saying that, when I think of our political system here in the U.S., I think that to me, it seems that there's a definite difference between what is being the platform of the Republican Party versus the platform of the Democrat Party. It seems that to me that with the Republicans, they're in favor of business, they're in favor, of free trade, they're, kind of trickle down economics and all that kind of stuff. And what I usually hear from politicians who claim that they are with the Democrats is that they are more in support of programs like Social Security, and they're more in support of anti-poverty programs, and they're more in support of pull yourself up by the bootstraps kind of programs, and they're in support of having more equitable tax policy so that say the middle class is not bearing the brunt of the tax burden in the country. And so what I hear you saying is that these guys they're the same. Am I correct in
What you're saying is interesting, but that's the biggest scam going. These two parties, they have their differences. At one time, maybe one party did something that was, let's say, in favor of the working class. But the reality is they represent the interests of the same people. That's the ruling class, both of them, Republican, Democrat, representing the interests of those at the very top, not the interests of the people. And if you really dig into who finances them and who gets the benefits for them, their families and friends, you'll find that both of them are enemies of the people. The people have no party. There's no viable party that represents the people here. This is the one-party country of the ruling class, Republican and Democrat. Those different parts of it, the Republicans are the right, and the Democrats are the nearer right. They're both right-wing parties, and they represent the interests of the rulers, not the people.
Okay, all right, wait a second. Shirley Chisholm from Brooklyn, like you, from Brooklyn. Okay, what do you got, was she part of a uniparty? Was she not representing your interests?
There are exceptions. However, the masses of the people, those 535 that occupy the Congress, that's the House of Representatives and the Senate, they don't work for us, most of them. There may be some one or two here and there that do, but the masses of them, all you have to do is look at the financial statements, see where they get their money to run, see what kind of benefits they're getting, what their benefits are for themselves, their families and friends. All you have to do is look at that and you see who runs the place. The people are not their constituents. the constituents of those people in Congress, for the most part, are the people at the very top, that 1% that runs the country.
Okay.
Those are the people they work for.
Okay. So we're in a pickle here. What you're saying? We're in a pickle.
The people are being screwed.
Okay. So my question to you, Brother David, is what do we do in this situation? You have described an untenable political situation in this country. What is your prescription to deal with this? What's
All
your
right.
prescription?
My prescription is very simple. First of all, you got to educate yourself to where you're living and what the deal is. And most people are completely ignorant of the system and how they're being played. You know, it's about playing the game. You know, the same title as my latest book, Playing the Game. You got to know how to play the game. And the game is not going with the ruling class, because the ruling class, the Republicans and the Democrats, have no interest in you. All their interest in protecting the 1% that are making all the profits while you suffer being poor. So the thing to do is, the major thing to do is make them hurt in their pocketbook. People have to understand that they need to do things to boycott some of these companies that are raking off the money from the people, and those corporations, and make them hurt in the pocketbook. That's the only way you're going to do that. You're not going to be able to do it by going down and voting for some creep who is working for someone else at your expense.
Okay. So here's the main point that I'm getting in this situation is you're telling people that they have to self-educate. They have
That's,
to know what's going on. So what is the method? I'm not gonna, we'll do this history some other time, but um, where do they start? Where do they go? To the library? To
well,
Google? Where do they go?
they can go a number of places. They can get on the computer. They can go to the library. They can go to bookstores and start getting good books. You see, the point is, if you go to school, the things that I'm talking about are never going to be in those expensive textbooks that the Board of Education in various communities buys. They're not going to talk about the things that I'm talking about. They're going to give you propaganda. There's no way that you can really get educated by limiting your schooling to what you get in these private and public schools. You have to do self-study. And that's the only way you're going to get it. And you have to go beyond what you get in the media. Don't forget, the media is controlled by that 1%. The radio, the television, the the newspapers, the magazines, they're all controlled by the 1%. So your chance of getting the type of things I'm talking about is next to nothing. No chance at all. So you
Okay.
have to seek
So
out to
I
do
got to
it.
interject here. So we're going a little longer than we normally go, but I'm going to allow it, quote, because you're passionate about it. And that's part of what this show is about. It's a platform for you as an educated, experienced person that has a different viewpoint
Mhm.
to express that viewpoint in a way that many people would not be accustomed to receiving information. So I'm going to ask you to give 3 sources that you would recommend to someone who wants to do their own educational process. Give me 3, just 3 good ones.
Um, I would say, if you want basic history, get Howard Zinn's book, The People's History of the United States. Um, that'd be a very good source. Another source would be, get on your computer and look up people like Professor Noam Chomsky and start listening to what he says. And another thing would be to look up people like Chris Hedges. That's a start. Those are three things you could do. And you're getting a different viewpoint than what you'd get in these lying public schools and colleges that don't teach you anything about the real deal. And if you
Okay.
want to know the real deal, that's what you have to do.
All right. So the book is The People's History of the United States by Zinn,
Yes, Howard Zinn, yes.
Howard Zinn, and Writings and Talks by Noam Chomsky.
Hmm.
And then the third one was,
Chris Hedges,
okay,
Writings and Talks.
who is he?
He's a journalist.
Journalist. Okay.
He worked for the New York Times, but he wouldn't toe the line and they got rid of him.
Okay. That's
So
often that's often what happens in life, right? If you working for a big company, you don't toe the line, they're going to jettison you.
You
right?
got it. You got
Okay.
it.
All right. So we're going to talk about something else, but in the meantime, I just want to bring up some current events because many of you who know Brother David and know his history know that he is a veteran and he served in the U.S. Air Force. He was a pilot trainee, and this is in the 1950s, going to training in the Deep South.
Catching hell.
OMG. Okay. Can you imagine? I cannot even think of it. And I live in Minneapolis in 2020. We're talking about 1950s in Tennessee.
In
Okay.
Georgia.
In Georgia. All right. Okay. So one of the big news items today is that the first ever top commanding officer of the Air Force is a black man. And I just want to get a couple comments from Brother David about what does that represent to you? What does it say? What is the meaning of that move? You know, we had Colin Powell, who was the head of Joint Chiefs of Staff. Now we have a black general who's commanding the U.S. Air Force. What does that mean?
Well, I think that is quite an accomplishment. And I'm sure that he has a lot of stories to tell about his experience in the Air Force. You know, I could tell stories. I saw lots of racism. I'm lucky to be alive because I wouldn't do things that I was expected to do. And I'm lucky that I can talk to you now because during the 50s, that was when Emmett Till was killed. Right after that, I was in Georgia. And I don't want to talk about the negative experiences I had. You know, I rather do not. They're very painful. But the point is, I'm lucky to be alive. So I know about what it was like in the 50s. Most people have no clue of what it was like in the 50s living in Georgia and Florida and Tennessee.
I got the secret here in my shirt pocket. You can have the time you're needed. You can just float with me. Ride it up, baby, ride it, baby. Ride it up like the sea.